Hello and welcome. I'm University of Iowa President Emerita Sally Mason, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's Women in Philanthropy presentation. The university long has been a shining example of discovery, collaboration, and pioneering spirit. Along the way, generous Hawkeyes around the globe have always supported our quests. That's because Hawkeyes give back. In fact, throughout this last year, more than 52,000 alumni, fans, and friends have come together to commit more than $210 million in donations. Together, they've helped Iowa do everything from finding treatments and cures for disease and exploring space to fueling innovation and educating the next generation of leaders. Every day and in every way, our alumni and friends give their time, talent, and treasure to help Iowa continue to flourish. In 2006, Iowa held its first retreat to celebrate the philanthropic impact women are making at Iowa and across the globe. Since then, women have continued to transform the philanthropic landscape, stepping up to make a difference for nonprofit organizations and higher education. As you may have seen in the news, billionaire philanthropist Mackenzie Scott, whose ex-husband, Jeff Bezos, is the founder and chief executive of Amazon, recently donated more than $5 billion of her fortune. She did so as part of a giving pledge she signed in which she agreed to distribute more than half of her wealth during her lifetime or in her will. Women such as Mackenzie Scott and the female philanthropists from whom you'll hear today truly are changing the philanthropy game, to quote the New York Times. Today, as we celebrate National Philanthropy Day, we felt it was fitting to honor some of these extraordinary leaders and to begin a dialogue about how generations of women are making big things happen here at Iowa and beyond. We would like to bring you into those conversations with us in hopes of inspiring you to continue investing in the communities that mean most to you. In addition to offering some insight into what sparks these female visionaries' philanthropic energies, we also want to encourage you to find your own ways of making the world a better place. We're grateful to Louise Peterson, Linda Baker, P. Sue Beckwith, Mary Joy Stead, Janice Ellig, Barbara Wilson, and Lynette Marshall for sharing their stories and commentary with us today. As you're watching, if you'd like to ask a question of one of our participants, please do so through the chat function. We'll collect your questions throughout the event and try our best to get to as many of them as possible at the end of our program. So without further delay, let's join our first conversation between alumnae Janice Ellig and Mary Louise Peterson. Janice Ellig is a 1968 graduate of the University of Iowa. As head of the Ellig Group, an executive search firm, Janice is dedicated to increasing the placement of women and diverse candidates on corporate boards and in C-suites by 2025. Heralded by Bloomberg Businessweek as one of the world's most influential headhunters, she's often consulted for her expertise and commitment to gender parity, inclusion, and diversity. Mary Louise Peterson graduated from Iowa in 1951 with a bachelor's degree in science education. She was appointed to the Iowa Board of Regents in 1969 and served as board president from 1973 to 1981. During her tenure, the Regents institutions enjoyed considerable growth in enrollment and quality, despite government cutbacks in financial support. Through her work on the National Board of Universities and Colleges, she's advised many institutions on financial planning and advancement.
Mary Louise Peterson, is such an honor to be with you today and to be interviewing an iconic leader in the state of Iowa and known nationally as well. So thank you so much for joining us in this series of Women in Philanthropy.
Well, I welcome the opportunity to share and look forward to doing a good job for the foundation and for the University of Iowa.
Well, you always do, and you will. So I want to start with the beginning, the genesis of where philanthropy began with you, because I have seen you speak about your dad and what he said early on. So could you tell us that story?
My father was on the Alumni Association and was active in the first development of fundraising when the Alumni Association was raising money for the first project that they did in that regard, which was the University of Iowa Museum of Art. And he called us one day and said to my husband, he said, I'm very busy and I'm working on this University of Iowa museum and I need your help. I have written you down for $25,000. And he didn't ask us whether we could or couldn't. And he said, you understand that you don't have to pay it all at one time. And so that made a tremendous difference. And my husband said to me, we can do this. He said, if we wait until we can afford to give, we will never do so. That we should begin our life together. We'd only been married a short time. He said, as we begin our life together, I think that we should always have a portion of our income go to projects and things that we care about. And the University of Iowa is where we met each other, and so it became our first philanthropy.
That's an amazing story. And you didn't have much money back then, right? I mean, this was difficult.
Oh, no. He had just come home from Korea. He was private when he went, and he was a PFC when he came back.
Yeah.
So, no, we didn't have very much.
Well, you developed a very powerful voice because in 1969, the then governor, Robert Ray, appointed you to the Board of Regents, correct? And you went on to lead the Board of Regents as president from 1973 to 1981. So you had 8 years in that leadership role. And I just wanted to read something that I found online. When you were appointed, John Baldridge in 1983 said after you'd been in the role, a woman as president of the Iowa State Board of Regents was a startling innovation. The fact that as the first woman so named displayed qualities of leadership that earned her plaudits not only in Iowa but nationally dispelled many sexist myths. I
didn't realize at the time that we were breaking some records, breaking some glass ceilings, as you might say. But it was a wonderful opportunity. And I did become involved with the Association of Governing Boards across the United States and had the opportunity to grow in my leadership, for I became the chair of the advisory board to the Association of Governing Boards and had lots of opportunities to work not only with other colleges and universities, but to gain great experience for myself.
Well, Mary Louise, there's a sign behind me that says, be the change. And it seems to me that you went on that Board of Regents to be the change. What did you want to change? What did you want to make different as that leader of that organization? Quite a powerful organization.
As is true today, we needed to seek public support from the legislature and the governor of Iowa. And historically, there had been a certain amount of conflict and competition between the three Regents institutions, and we were allowed to be played off one against the other. And so one of the things that I did, I insisted that we agreed to our asking from the governor and from the legislature, and that we petitioned and testified and together. And we did not allow ourselves to be played off one against the other, for we all lost. And that cooperation and joint participation in testifying for higher education has continued. And it's one of the things I'm very proud of.
You should be very proud of. We need you in Washington, D.C., Mary Louise. to get everybody working together. So in 1984, you were inducted into the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame. And that was significant because you're up there with first ladies, with economists, with senators, with physicians, educators, and an astronaut. Tell us how that feels, and what should other women do to have a place in history?
Well, one of the things that I think is important is to take advantage of the opportunities that you have to serve and to grow and to work cooperatively with others, so that as you move along, you're bringing along other women and other people that can grow the opportunities for the recognition for higher education, not only in our own country, but around the world. I had the opportunity to visit Canada. I had the opportunity to help with projects in Egypt. And all of those opportunities allowed me to grow and allowed me to cultivate other people who could assume and should be able to assume responsibility if they are given the education and the opportunities and the training to do so.
You have been such an inspiration. Do you have any parting words that you would like to say at this point?
Go Hawks!
Go Hawks. You've given so much, you and Rand and your whole family. So thank you for your generosity of your time, your efforts, your commitment, your caring, passion, and your financial support. But you have also been a role model for many, many women. And as we look at the university, we look at the state of Iowa Women's Hall of Fame, and we see your picture up there, Mary Louise Peterson, you are somebody we all want to emulate. So thank you for taking the lead. Thank you for mentoring me and showing me the path on philanthropy.
We're proud of you. You've done a good job.
I'm talking about you. You were my mentor. So thank you so very much, Mary Louise Peterson.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Okay, and go Hawks.
And go Hawks.
Next, we'll be listening in on a conversation between philanthropist Linda Baker and UI Center for Advancement President and CEO Lynette Marshall. Linda graduated in 1968 with a degree in English and secondary education. Driven by a desire to help others, she pursued community and children's services opportunities, working as a preschool teacher for a United Way agency, as a middle school teacher, as an investigative reporter for a local consumer magazine, and spent 19 years working in an elementary school library. Linda and her husband Dale support a number of areas at Iowa, including the Colleges of Education and Public Health and the Tippie College of Business. Linda is passionate about helping Iowa students study and volunteer abroad and has established the Linda R. Baker Teacher Leader Center in the College of Education. She'll be talking with Lynette Marshall, with whom I had the great pleasure of working during my time as university president. Together, Lynette and I launched For Iowa Forevermore, the most ambitious campaign in our university's history. She's a Midwestern native who grew up on a fifth-generation family farm near Peoria, Illinois. She came to Iowa in 2006 after 25 years in fundraising at her alma mater, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, including 2 years as Associate Chancellor for Development. So let's listen now as Lynette and Linda discuss the power of philanthropy.
Linda, we're so grateful to you for making time to talk today and to share your philanthropic journey with those who are tuning in. So I would love to start at the beginning for you. When do you think you first understood the power of giving back?
I think I began to understand the power of giving back when I was a child. And I think it begins as a child with the power of observation. In the 1950s, my mother and a group of neighbors, of course, women in those days, most of them worked out inside the home, not outside of the home. And my mother and her neighbors would have what they called a coffee clutch a couple times a week when they'd get together and sit around their kitchen tables and chat. One of the people in our neighborhood had a special needs son. And in the 1950s, there was virtually no place for him to go for any kind of education. The public schools did not have any programs. They drove him, this was in the suburbs of Chicago, quite a few miles away to some sort of a random program. So these women sitting around the kitchen table decided that wasn't right. And my observation had nothing to do with money. My first observation of giving back was charitable service as a little girl. And I also learned something about those women, and that is the power of women. In 1950s, the two words women and power were not often used in the same sentence, let's face it. So these women, by 1961, had gotten a school going. The name of the school is Glenkirk. It's in Glenview, Illinois. That's Glen. And the Kirk is from the name of the family with the special needs child, Kirkpatrick. Now, Glenkirk finally opened after probably 5 to 6 years, motivated by these women and then their husbands. And now Glenkirk has campuses all over the Chicago area. It is an absolute thriving concern. So what I learned about giving back was charitable service, and I saw women in power. That's how I first got into giving back. I think a child observes.
That's a really powerful story, and what a remarkable thing for those schools to have continued to serve children for so many years.
It just started with a group of women finding seeing a real great need and doing something about it. And then my mother went on to volunteer in the school after it was built.
Oh, how nice. I understand that your father once said to you, when you are able, help out other students. Why do you think that student support specifically was so important to him?
Education meant everything to my family. My grandfather was born in France. My father went to night school for 17 years at Northwestern while my mom was raising us, and had a blind grandfather living in the 2-flat above us in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And education meant everything. My father was never able to get a degree, but for 17 years he worked at it. Mm-hmm. And he never became terribly upset that he didn't get the degree because he felt he got the education. And so, my dad, my senior year in high school, I had a friend who was going through a lot of family situations, and she'd been accepted to the University of Illinois. But during that summer, right before school, her family sort of fell apart, and so she came to live with us. And my dad and my mom said, whatever my mom did for me to get ready for college, we were going to do for Anne also. Mm-hmm. And he made sure she had money. Her tuition had been paid for, but made sure she had money, she had the toiletries, she had the clothes. So to my dad, that was his idea of education, was helping a child get an education. When our son was a senior in high school, a friend of his came to live with us senior year, again, another very dysfunctional family. And we worked with him to get his college applications filled out. We sent him off at much the same way my father sent Anne off. So it's just something in our family. But to my dad, it was the idea of passing it on, passing it along.
Well, we appreciate all that you have done and continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
What message, Linda, would you like to pass along to the next generation of philanthropists?
I think we have to work with the next generations by starting with service, getting our children involved in service activities also. It doesn't always start with money. My dad was helping students. We've helped students. I have no doubt that Brian and Leslie will. I was chairman of volunteers at Raleigh Hospital for Children in Indianapolis, and one of their mottos is, every child deserves the world. And we can also say that about students. We want to open up the world to students. My dad saying he never wanted to be the richest man in the cemetery. We don't want to be the richest people in the cemetery either. Money is there to share. Love isn't love until you give it away. And that's the way we feel about money also. And so we don't want to be the richest people in the cemetery. And again, love, philanthropy, service, they all go together.
Linda, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. The way that you have inspired not just your family, but many others of us with the giving that you and Dale have provided to the University of Iowa and to your community and the world is emblematic for the rest of us. And we're grateful for the service and the support that you have provided. So thank you.
You're very welcome. It's our honor and privilege.
Thanks to Linda for sharing her philanthropic passions and why it's so important to create opportunities for fellow Hawkeyes. Next, we're going to hear more from Janice Ellig, who will be speaking with UI Center for Advancement President and CEO Lynette Marshall.
Hello, Janice. Thank you so much for joining us today from New York City and for taking part in this series of conversations that I've very much been looking forward to with women philanthropists. And I thought we might start today with the question of where your own passion comes from in terms of supporting women with philanthropic aspirations.
Lynette, it's an honor and privilege and a joy to join you today, and to be part of this series, because we're talking about two of my most favorite subjects, empowering women and the University of Iowa. So thank you for having me today. So my passion for really empowering women and also women to then give back comes from my family. We didn't come from much, but my parents were really giving in terms of there was always room for somebody else at the table. So while money was not abundant, our table was abundant and our invitations were.
I'm interested in who you might have drawn inspiration from in terms of your own philanthropic support, and if there were women amongst that group.
So again, my mother and my sisters, but other women, I really have to start with the University of Iowa Foundation at the time, and now Center for Advancement. It started with Mary Louise Peterson. And Mary Louise Peterson had been on the Regents Board for 12 years and sat on the University of Iowa Board for many years. And she's really an icon in the industry. I remember her sitting at the boardroom table. And of course, we have this big round table. And with her steely grayish green eyes, looking at all of us. And I thought she was looking directly at me at the time. And she said, we have to give to this university. They need us. We are privileged and we have to give until it hurts. And that was my first major contribution donation to the University of Iowa, was because of Mary Louise Peterson. I just had to do it. And I'm so glad I did and continue to do it. But she was one. And then the others on the University of Iowa Center for Advancement Board, Sue Beckwith has been so generous, Kathy Dorr, Mary Joy Stead with the Stead Family Hospital, the Tippies, the Papa Johns. I mean, it's just a phenomenal board with great generosity, but great generosity with caring, and caring about not just one part of the university, but many parts of the university. So they give in many different areas, and I just have learned so much from that.
Sometimes we have conversations about what it means to actually have a seat at the table in terms of philanthropy or decision-making at organizations. And I'm interested in your perspective on what it means to you and how you are encouraging women today to have a voice and a seat at the table.
The lone voice does not get heard. You can say something, and then 5 minutes later, a guy will say the exact same thing. They'll say, yeah, Charlie, that's a great idea. And, so women have to really promote their other women, other executives that are qualified for jobs to sit around the table with you, because otherwise our voices will not be heard. And I think this goes for government as well as in the corporate arena, because if we have lawmakers that are all men, they're never going to really focus on violence against women and children. They're never going to focus on, charging extra on airplanes for bags or whatever when you've got kids. There's so many things that, we're wired differently, and God bless it that we are. But you really need to have balance at the table.
So you currently serve as the chair of the board of the University of Iowa Center for Advancement. And I'm just wondering how this kind of role fulfills your passion for the University of Iowa.
It's really being part of the strategic process, the planning process, but more than anything, it's the people. I mean, I just have met the most incredible people around that boardroom table at the university, at the Center for Advancement, under your leadership. Just so many great individuals. So my passion is, it's time consuming too, Lynette, as you know. But I've learned so much. I've learned how a university works, how it has had to work during a pandemic. And, my husband is University of Wisconsin. We both feel very strongly about our respective universities and being able to give back to the students that I mentioned, the scholarship, but also, this is sort of a sad story, but, we have in the Stead Family Hospital, Children's Hospital, there is the Janice and Bruce Ellig Library. And so the children go to this library, and several months ago, I received a letter from Megan Gleason, whose little boy Reed, at 3 years of age, passed away last October. And she sent me this letter that I read part of it to the board, and I couldn't get through a lot of it because it was just so sad. But she was so strong, and she talked about how Reed loved this hospital, and he would, throw bowling ball down, plastic ones down the hallways, and he'd go into all the nook and crannies of the hospital. And she said he loved the library so much. I would love to have a Reed's Reading Corner. So, of course, I called Sheila Baldwin, your director of development for the whole medical area. And I said, Sheila, what can we do? And so there were some tricky things to make happen, but Sheila and her team made it happen. We carved out a section to be called Reed's Reading Corner, and was with Megan on a Zoom, and we'll see her when I go to the board meeting this October. But this little boy was so brave, and he just loved this. It was called the Hospital Hotel. And, they were wonderful parents. And she then had another child after that. But those are the people that you do a library and you never think anybody's really going to really benefit. But we're really delighted to have Reed's Reading Corner now there.
It's a powerful story, and it's a remarkable reminder of what we like to call the transformative impact of the power of philanthropy. And you have been an important part of that in so many different ways, Janice. And I thank you for having this conversation today with us, and we look forward to your continued leadership for our board and all of the good things going forward. Thank you so much.
Well, Lynette, I just want to thank you and your whole staff at the University of Iowa Center for Advancement, because it's remarkable to have gone through the pandemic, everything that needed to be done to keep our employees safe, and then working with the university. And I am so proud to be part of the university again, going back to what Mary Louise Peterson told me I had to give till it hurts. And I just think women giving back where it really can make a difference is what we're all about. And that's really empowering women. But always, as one dear friend of mine always said, reaching ahead to move up, but always having a hand behind you to pull another woman along. And so doing that however we can, by our time, our money, or other resources. So thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Lynette and Janice. It's my pleasure now to introduce you to the 22nd president of the University of Iowa and the third woman to serve as president, Barbara Wilson. She's been with Iowa since July and is quickly making an impact on our great university. Dr. Wilson came to Iowa from the University of Illinois system, where she served as Executive Vice President and Vice President for Academic Affairs, and was a professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She also served as Executive Vice Provost for Faculty and Academic Affairs, and then as the Harry E. Preble Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences before being appointed Interim Chancellor. A native of Wisconsin, Dr. Wilson obtained her bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees from the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Good evening, and thank you, President Emerita Mason. It is such a pleasure to be with everyone this evening as we hear from some of our university's most loyal and generous women. Philanthropy offers a way for people to express their gratitude and their support for their passions, but it also plays a growing critical role in advancing the future of institutions like the University of Iowa. We are able to fulfill our mission, meet our goals, and grow our aspirations thanks to the generosity of dedicated friends and donors. As I become more familiar with the University of Iowa each and every day, and as I meet the many great Hawkeyes who give back in so many ways, I'm humbled by their unwavering support. People give because of a spark, a pull, a passion, an experience. There's something that propels them to reach out and freely offer to help others to succeed. That creates a chain, a network of those who are making a difference. And it is then a true Hawkeye enterprise. I'm learning with every interaction that Hawkeyes are collaborative, they're caring, they're hardworking, and they're forward-thinking. And together, we have the power to change the world. I've been inspired by the many conversations already this evening, and like all of you, I look forward to hearing the ones that will come up shortly. Before we get back to those incredible ladies, it's my pleasure to introduce you all to a remarkable young woman who graduated not that long ago from the College of Law and is already making a huge impact for so many. As I think about the university's future and all that we strive for, I'm comforted to know that young women like the one we are featuring today in our Young Philanthropist Spotlight is setting the course for future Hawkeyes and our world. I am delighted to introduce you to Winnie Ulocha.
My name is Winnie Ulocha, and I graduated in 2019 from the University of Iowa College of Law and the University of Iowa College of Public Health with my JD and Master's in Health Administration degree. The idea of philanthropy actually was something that I knew from an early age. My mother provided scholarships while she was also a college student to various family members, and so the idea of always giving back was sort of ingrained in me as a child. During my time on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at the law school, I learned from the Dean of Admissions that whenever students from underserved communities actually visit the law school, cost was an issue for them to visit. And so I thought, well, if that's the issue, and usually if they do visit the law school, there's a higher chance of them matriculating to the University of Iowa College of Law, then how can we sort of close that gap? Being awarded the Philip G. Hubbard Human Rights Award as a law student was a huge honor for me because it meant that my work was recognized and didn't go unnoticed. And it absolutely inspired me and motivated me to want to also create the Alexander Clark Jr. Endowment Fund to be able to leave a lasting legacy for the University of Iowa. The idea for the Alexander Clark Jr. Award came from our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee meetings and thinking about wanting to close that gap and helping more students to not only visit the law school, but just really see our community. And the purpose of the fund is to assist prospective law students from underserved communities to pay their lodging and travel expenses to visit the law school. So Alexander Clark Jr. was actually the first African American to graduate from the University of Iowa. And I decided to name the fund after him because of the contributions that he has made to the law school, and also recognizing that if it weren't for him and his trailblazing ways, that I would have not been at the University of Iowa. What I'm doing today is I'm continuing my work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space at my firm Goodwin, where I'm a part of a women's initiative group that we just started this year. I'm also on a committee for women's health and health disparities and maternal health. And I'm hoping that my work will just inspire more people to give back and do as much or as little as they can, but just in some way give back to their communities. What I would say to young women who aren't sure how they can make a difference is just to start and believe that they can make a difference, no matter how small it may be.
Providing access to all who want to be Hawkeyes is the most important part of Iowa's mission. Next up, Lynette Marshall returns to speak with alumna P. Sue Beckwith about why opening doors for students, and particularly student athletes, is so important to her. Sue was a member of the Hawkeye women's basketball team from 1976 to 1980 and holds 3 degrees from Iowa. Now retired, she was a colorectal surgeon with Iowa Clinic Surgery PC in Des Moines and a clinical associate in the UI Department of Surgery. Sue was elected board chair of Fairway Stores, Inc. in October 2017. She's provided transformational support for women's athletics at Iowa, including a gift to endow the head women's basketball coaching position. I hope you enjoy Lynette's conversation with Sue.
So, Sue, you have described yourself as a typical small-town Iowa kid who grew up with a sister in Boone and raised by a single mom. And you have said that your mother gave you all the support and opportunities that she was able to. I wonder if you would be willing to talk with us a little bit about your early years and share how that shaped your feelings about providing opportunities for others.
I think I would relate back to the old adage of roots and wings, because there's no question that we were given such a wonderful foundation, that Mom gave us unending support, unending love, and we could always count on that. But I think that came with some expectations, and those expectations were things like working hard and being honest and having integrity and being successful at something. I think that's probably where the wings came in. And I remember Mom often told a story about when we were, 2 and 4 or 4 and 6, whatever. She put us in dance class. And I did it for, a year or two. And then she said, I came and I just said, Mommy, I can't do this. It's just fine. So I went out in the backyard and played with the boys, and 60 years later, Chris is still dancing. So she wanted us to be successful at something, but there were no limitations on that. I never felt like there was any limitations on what I could do. And remember who I followed. Remember that Chris was 2 years older than I, and she worked for everything. And she never had an A in her life. It was always an A+. And to this day, that's not even good enough. So I know I was lucky to have them in my life and to be given that foundation. And I know that that's not true of everyone. And if it is true at home, it may not be when one leaves home and goes off to college or takes the next phase. So if I can do something to provide that support and that safety for somebody else, that would be really important to me.
So, Sue, you were involved in team sports starting when you were young, and then eventually you came to play Hawkeye basketball. What do you think those team relationships did for you at the time? And did they have any impact on your future career as a surgeon?
I think you hit on a key word, and that's relationships. Because I said that Mom wanted us to be independent or to be able to be independent, but almost kind of the flip side of that is teamwork, and certainly to be part of it, to know your role, to depend upon others, to help others. All of those things are so important, have been so important my entire life. I remember when it was going into maybe my junior or senior year, and my high school basketball coach took me aside, and that was back in the 6-player days. And he said to me, yeah, you can score 40 points a game. And remember, this was a different system, but he said, you can score 40 points a game and we're going to lose 50-40. Or you can make sure that the other two score 20, you score 20, and we're going to win 60-50. And you know what? If you look at what we did back in those days, we won 60-50 every game. So, yes, teamwork, it really is involved in everything. I mean, if you think about surgery, you can't do surgery by yourself. You have to have somebody put the patient to sleep. You have to have somebody handy instruments. You can't expose and cut at the same time. You have to have that too. So teamwork has been a vital part of my life. It's a part of business. It's a part of everything. You have to know when to take the shot, and you have to know when to throw the assist. It seems like it's just about covers everything in life.
Many of the people watching this program may be aware of your most recent act of generosity when you made one of the most significant contributions in the history of athletics at the University of Iowa, a total gift of $7 million, which will endow the Iowa women's basketball head coaching position and continue to grow the P. Sue Beckwith, MD, Black and Golden Opportunities Fund, which provides support to many sports. What do you think the aha moment was when you decided to make this kind of transformational gift?
Well, it didn't start out that way. I was searching for something that I wanted to put in my estate plans. And that was a long, hard search into myself. Well, then as time went on, as I thought about it and thought more about it, I thought, yeah, I'm going to do that. But do I really want to wait? Do you want to wait until you're dead to do something? I mean, that you know. And I have to admit that there actually was an aha moment, and I have to smile about that because you probably remember, because I actually was driving over to a football game over in Iowa City, and I decided I'm not waiting until I'm dead. I'm doing this now. You know, why not? And so I sent a text to you and to Sloan, and I said, hey, you guys know where I tailgate. You want to stop by my car on the way to walking into the game? I want to talk to you for a minute. So although there was a lot more that went into it, a lot of time, a lot of thought, a lot of soul searching about what I wanted to do, there actually was an aha moment associated with that.
I do remember that. That's always a cherished memory. I remember exactly where we were, and that was a lovely surprise for Sloan and me. I want to tell you something that Gary Barta said about you. He said, Sue's professional accomplishments, personal drive, and philanthropic commitment are truly an inspiring example of a lifelong and loyal Hawkeye. Sue's dedication to athletics is inspiring other female philanthropists to give back in their own way here at Iowa. So I think that does affirm what you were saying earlier, that you're allowing us to put your name on important programs that you have supported has inspired others. What does it mean for you to hear that you are inspiring other women to give back to Iowa? And what message do you think you're passing along to our next generation of philanthropists?
I want to really stress to people what is possible. And first, I think it's important to know that it doesn't matter exactly what somebody does. It's going to make a difference. So whether somebody puts a day into a food bank or go paints a wall, or for a Habitat for Humanity or something like that. Helping one person is extremely important, and it has ripple effects. So that one person may help many more people. And so no matter how big or small it is, I think it's important that everyone should know that what they do, what they can do, makes a difference. The next thing I would say is that it's also important to stretch oneself. I think, was it Mary Louise Peterson that said, don't give till it hurts, give till it feels good. So I think that's important, because it is a lot of fun to help. Everybody, I think, gets rewarded a millionfold back when we give. And so look at what's possible. Think about it. Start small, that's fine. But this is something that many people need to think about. And as I said, do it when you're alive. Don't put everything into an estate and say, somebody else deal with it. Enjoy it. I certainly have.
And we're grateful to you for doing that and allowing us to create those impact moments for student athletes because of your generosity. Thank you so much, Sue. It's been a delight to be able to chat with you, and we look forward to the good work ahead and are grateful for your service on the UICA board.
Thank you, Lynette. It was nice talking to you.
University of Iowa Healthcare has the immense privilege and responsibility of caring for Iowa and our world's most vulnerable. And healthcare professionals at University of Iowa Stead Family Children's Hospital are working to protect and care for Iowa's future, our children. Their important work is backed by the generosity of many, but one of our children's greatest supporters is with us today. Mary Joy Stead. Mary Joy, a native of Maquoketa, Iowa, and her husband Jerry made the lead gift for UI Stead Family Children's Hospital. Today, she and fellow Children's Hospital donor Janice Ellig will talk about why it's so important to create the next generation of philanthropists.
Mary Joy Stead, this is such an honor for me to be interviewing you. You have been my role model on the University of Iowa Center for Advancement Board for many years, and I'm just so grateful for all you're doing. You two have been so generous, certainly to the University of Iowa. We're going to get into that, but also many other causes across the country. And I'm just going to name a few, from Alzheimer's to mental health, to the Lambda Chi Alpha Educational Foundation, and the Stead Center, which was founded to promote the teaching and research of ethics and values, something that you and Jerry really live by. And so all of this giving, was about, you're always there to help others. And you've always said that, with a little bit of help, people can soar. And so you've been there with them, for your time, your talent, your treasure. But what are some of the lessons you have learned about giving back and how this has made you feel, and how this is going to be passed on to your children and grandchildren so that they can follow your lead?
I think our children recognize that in us, not that we've pushed them, but I think they recognize that when we do give, the areas we do share our wealth, our talents in so many different directions, that we are benefiting from it ourselves, and just growing and feeling that warmth in our hearts and everything. And such as, well, you mentioned too, with the University of Iowa Children's Hospital, that we did put in the Stead family because we wanted all of our family to be involved with it, not just the two of us. But it's still, at that point, we had not thought about putting our name on a building. And our dear friend John Papajohn said, you will reap the benefits. And he didn't even know all that at that time, but has been reaping the benefits from naming and giving things to help others all his life. And so when finally we said, yes, we'll name the Children's Hospital, that just warmed our hearts. And of course, that wave that was thought of, it makes everybody feel good.
That wave is national and maybe even international when you see people in the stadium going like this with the children. And of course, I know you have worked with many of the families of those children that are at the hospital.
Helping people medically is so important, but everything we do to make the children there and their families in particular feel comfortable, feel happy, feel that they are getting the best help and love that they can get.
You know, you have made it so that it's contagious as well. I've watched you around that UICA, formerly known as the Iowa Foundation, watched you for so many years with your giving, your ideas, and the time you've given, and it becomes something that I then feel I must do as well, right? So it's sort of contagious, isn't it? It's sort of like, of course we should be doing it. Of course we should just do it. Right?
Of course we should be doing that. And there are lots of different ways that I feel that. Yeah. And make connections with people in so many different directions.
And so I look at you as a role model, for other women. Why is it important for women to be in philanthropy, to be giving, again, time, resources, money? Why is that so important?
I think as women, part of our personalities are compassion, caring, reaching out and caring for other people. It doesn't mean that men don't do this too, but I think that's within our personalities, that we know it's important. Other people just need to have us there, and we can help one another. And I think that's women need to be recognized that way. And not that we need to receive special honors or anything, but we do need to be able to be recognized for helping other people. And it's something we can do.
Yes, and it's our voice, isn't it? Because we will raise issues around a need that men may not see, but women would see because of how we're built, how we're wired.
And Jerry and I work as a team. We always have within our marriage, within our life. And to me, that is important, to know what my husband is doing and to be able to step in and it's okay for me to verbalize what what my ideas are too. And then that way we can put our two heads together.
And I've seen that in action, and it's absolutely true. He will defer to you, you will defer to him, then you'll come together and yes, this is what we should do. So what do you want to do next? Individually, collectively, is there something else that you want as your legacy going forward?
Haven't really thought, in depth, but we want to continue doing what we're doing and finding ways just to help and encourage other people to continue doing that and helping find the talents, the special talents within our children and within our friends and ways that they can reach out to help others.
So Mary Joy, you really have been such a force on the University of Iowa Center for Advancement. You raise great questions. You're interested in so many things. Give us a few words of advice for other women in terms of joining organizations such as the University of Iowa or other causes that prompted you to do it, and again, for them to do it. What's your words of advice? Just do it?
just listen to what's going on around you, and something will be right there that you feel strongly about, and find a way to make a difference in other people's lives. And the more you do for others, the more you're really also doing for yourself, and making your life better along the way.
Mary Joy, as a distinguished alumna of the University of Iowa, many other awards you've received, your service to the University of Iowa Center for Advancement, as vice chairman of campaigns, you have given so much. And I personally want to say I truly value you as a professional colleague, but as a friend as well. So thank you for your good counsel and advice to me along the way, because it really has made a difference in my life.
Thank you, Janice. This was wonderful.
And thank you to you and Jerry for all that you do for the University of Iowa and the Center for Advancement. We really appreciate it. You are most generous in every single way possible, of time, talent, resources, and really giving back. Thank you, Mary Joy.
Thank you, Janice and Mary Joy. I'd like to thank all of today's participants for sharing their stories with us. Our global network of alumni and friends is working to ensure that generations of Hawkeyes will find success here at Iowa and beyond, and we're truly grateful. It's been a pleasure serving as your host. I send you all best wishes, and now I'd like to turn the program over to Lynette Marshall, who will pose your questions to some of our panelists. Lynette, take it away.
Thank you so much, Sally. We are so glad that you could be part of this great National Philanthropy Day tribute to women who have made a difference here at Iowa and beyond. Sally, your own impact on higher education has had an effect across the nation, and it has been especially profound at the schools that you have served. And I'm so glad that Iowa benefited from your leadership. Our audience members watching from home have some questions for our panelists this evening, and we're fortunate to have a few of the panelists with us. So let's welcome back President Emerita Sally Mason, Janice Ellig, Linda Baker, and Sue Beckwith. Thanks for being with us, ladies, and thank you for participating in this event. We are really overjoyed to be able to share this with alumni and friends this evening. I'd like to start with Sally. Sally, as a former university president, you worked with so many of our generous alumni and friends. What are your observations about women and the leading role that they play in charitable giving?
Lynette, it's been fun to watch women really step up to the plate. And it's been happening a lot and more frequently over the years that I've been in higher education. It's a real pleasure to see that. Having been involved at several institutions and women in philanthropy groups, it's particularly rewarding to be able to see women like the four that I'm looking at on this screen this evening, and the many stories that I heard this evening. It's so inspiring, and it feels great to know these women, to understand very fundamentally the impact that they've had on the University of Iowa in particular. Wonderful institution, but higher education in this country is so important and so fundamentally a part of the American dream. It was for me growing up. I think it was for many of the women who are giving back today. To be able to do that is very special. And women give back in interesting ways and very different ways from men, for example. And that's fun to see. It's fun to see. I loved Sue's story about, I don't want to wait until I'm dead to have an impact. I loved Linda's comment about it doesn't always start with money. I love the impact Janice has had on so many women and so many people in her life. And all of the women's stories that we heard tonight are just so important in terms of helping others, especially other women, understand the importance of sharing our own personal good fortune with those who perhaps don't yet quite understand what their good fortune might be later on in their lives. So thanks for allowing me to be part of this. It's great to be back among Hawkeyes again, and it's great to see these terrific women that I've had the great pleasure of getting to know in my lifetime.
Oh, thank you, Sally. It's been good to have you with us this evening. A question for you, Janice. Janice, I know that one of your real passions is having a seat at the table. And one example of your giving that we haven't had time to talk with about tonight is the gift that you made in memory of your sister, Adrienne, who was also an alumna of the University of Iowa. And I wonder if you'd be willing to talk about the scholarship fund that you created in her memory and how you've gone even beyond that to develop this wonderful network for the women who have received that support.
So, like many here on the call, my mother was a major influence in my life, and I was the youngest of three girls. And she gave me three lessons when I was 10 years of age, and that was love what you do, never rely on anybody else, including a man or husband, to be your support, be financially independent, and stay close to your sisters. So I expanded that sister network to all of those that I worked with, and then when I was brought back into the University of Iowa fold and wanted to set up the scholarship in her name, we now have, since 1999, we have 23 women who have received the scholarship in her name. And I've said to them, it's not about how much you give, it's really the network of giving back to each other. And so all of these women now have a network where they're supporting each other in the terms of their career. So they're at 21 years of age to 44 years of age. And they're really helping each other move to the next level in public health. And so for me, it's all about women. While you're reaching forward to move yourself up, is putting a hand behind you to take your other women behind you and bring them up with you. This to me is critical because in corporate America, in government, in academia, wherever we are, 50% of the population cannot be ignored. And so we really have to make sure that women's voices are heard, and one voice at the table will never be heard. So every woman has to help every other woman. And it's not just about money. It's really about advice, mentoring, and pulling women along with you. So for me, this has been my passion from when my mother at 10 years of age said, stay close to your sisters. Well, I've sort of expanded that a lot.
That's great. Thank you very much. Sue, one of the common themes throughout your discussions is the idea of paying tribute or honoring someone who has inspired you. And I know you've had many, but one of the gifts you made was to honor Christine Grant. And I just wondered if you'd be willing to share why it was important to you to honor Christine and to establish a scholarship in her name.
None of us have gotten to whatever stage we are in our lives without those who have gone before. And at the time I was at the University of Iowa, I did not recognize what Dr. Grant was doing for me, as well as for thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, of girls and women in the United States and around the world. And when I finally came to realize that, I certainly wanted to honor that. I have to tell you that just very recently, within the past week or two, when I was talking to her, I asked her, what would you like me to do to carry on what you have done? And she started talking about something that was so large. My thoughts were within my realm and so small. And when I heard her articulate what her thoughts were, I realized she does not. She thinks so globally. And then the amazing thing is she goes out and she does it. She makes huge differences. I've said before that it is important to make a small difference because of the ripple effects. There are a few people in this world, like Dr. Grant, who makes huge differences. And that certainly is is worthy of any honor that I could bestow on her.
Well, thank you. She certainly is exceptionally deserving, isn't she?
Yes.
Linda, during our chat, you talked about a number of ways to give back, including by volunteering, which all of us certainly concur with. In the spring of 2005, you spent 3 weeks volunteering in a Romanian orphanage through the Iowa Voyagers program. And I know that you were deeply moved by that experience, so moved, in fact, that you decided to establish a scholarship so that Iowa students could have similar opportunities. Why was that important to you, Linda?
When we saw this advertised in the Iowa Voyagers magazine, my husband Dale is the one who actually pointed it out. And he said, Linda, I think this is something you would really like. I think it's got your name all over it. So I did, went to Romania, worked in it was actually an orphanage. The children there were in great need of every service, and had children with rickets, children who were greatly delayed. Their main food was drinking what I called a gruel out of a bottle. They would just cut the nipple hole bigger so more of it could come out. And these were children that we would have been giving table food to long before this. And it just made such an impact on me how filling these little kids' love buckets, even though when I left, I kept thinking, well, I bonded with these children and now I'm leaving. And how does that affect these kids? How does that affect these babies? They bond with me, I bond with them, and then I go. And then the next person comes in. And Diane Baker, who was head of the Voyagers, and I, a few months after I had come back from Romania, we were at some event in Iowa, and a mentor, Dr. Ken McGid, who was a child psychologist that I had worked with, had been killed in a plane crash, very tragically. And Diane Baker and I were at this Iowa event, and, you know, she was saying, I wish we had a way to get students over to a program like that. And I'm thinking, gosh, I didn't know what to do to honor my mentor, Ken McGid. And it was literally the idea of the light bulb above two people's heads. And I said, wait, how about this? And it was as much Diane as me. As I said, how about if we set up a scholarship in the name of my mentor who was killed, Dr. Ken McGid, for Iowa students to go to, at that time it was just Romania. And so it was literally two heads coming up with a really successful idea ultimately. And it was through Global Volunteers is what the University of Iowa used. And I also felt, you know, I was at the age when I got down on the floor with the kids and it was really hard to get back up. And I figured that the students were a little more nimble than I was. But over these years now, we've spent 47 students, not just to Romania, but to Ecuador, to Cuba, and then the pandemic hit, of course. But just last week, Dale and I had lunch with the person who's the founder and the head of Global Volunteers, and about other ways to perhaps include Iowa students in some of their other projects. So it just grew from two people talking about how can we get Iowa students over there and how can I honor my mentor? And it just grew from there. And I'm very happy to say we have spent 47 students.
That's really remarkable to think about the number of lives that you have touched, yes. Not just the students' lives, but those then that they have been able to interact with in the various countries. And really that question addresses one of the other ones, and I think we'll have this as our last question, but for anyone who might wish to comment, the question came in via email earlier today, and that was whether there are opportunities to be mentored by an established donor for guidance for someone who's just becoming engaged in philanthropy, to learn how to create scholarships or foundations or other tips that would allow a woman to make lasting legacy contributions. So most of you have spoken briefly about how you became involved, but I wonder if you have any counsel for the woman who has asked this question.
Well, I would say start with your own interests. If it's something that you feel passionate about, then either volunteer for it, give some money for it, start with what you like, but keep your mind open when somebody suggests something else. My idea is not to micromanage anything. I just want to feel comfortable and that our money is going to the right people, but we're not interested in micromanaging it. I think that for us, that sort of defeats the purpose because people know a lot more than I do about how to manage these things. But I would say to a young woman starting out, what are you interested in? Start with that, but keep your mind open to other suggestions that people give you.
Linda, that's great advice. It really is all about passion. What you're passionate about, what you have, what resonates with you. I've had the opportunity at several institutions to leave scholarships behind. And when I get a thank you note from a young person who's received one of those scholarships, and Janice, I see nodding her head because she's had this same experience, I'm sure. I know Sue has, I know Linda has. It makes you feel so good to know that it's having an impact. And sharing how you feel with young people, with other young women today, helping them understand that kind of feeling, I think can make a big difference in terms of how they ultimately think about what they can do. And it's often something fairly modest, like a scholarship. Sometimes they're modest, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're quite dramatic in terms of the impact they have. But being able to do that can make a huge difference to so many people.
Yes, Sally, I think it's important that we know that, thank goodness, everybody's passion lies in a different place, right? And you've heard from several of us, and each one of us have different ideas about helping. And I think that the most rewarding way to do is to do something that you are passionate about. So as Linda said, what are you interested in? And then start small. I don't think that there's anybody, if you talk to Papa John, you talk to anybody, it started off with 50 cents, right? Or painting a wall at Habitat for Humanity or whatever. And so it starts small, you get it back a billion-fold when you give, and you see what feels good to you. And that's what it makes it a give, a win-win situation.
I was just going to say that, so I'm a native New Yorker who went out to Iowa, and being pulled back in after all those years. And I feel so fortunate, one, to chair the University of Iowa Center for Advancement Board, but also to see these young ladies having their network. The scholarships to me are really important. And then locally I give, to my YMCA in New York City. You can't boil the ocean. You can't totally solve world hunger. But I think we can impact individuals' lives in so many ways. And I always say the voice of a woman at a table makes a huge difference because we do look at things differently than men do. So for me, the more I can have more women give back, whether it be $100, $100 million, $100,000, or whatever it is, or their time, that's really what's going to change the world. It's like the Margaret Mead quote about, it's a small group of committed citizens that have changed the world, and that's all that ever has changed the world. And I think a lot of those citizens are women because we look at the world differently. So for me, the University of Iowa made a major difference in my life. You have to give back to Iowa. So thank you, Lynette, for the opportunity.
Well, thank you to each of you, President Emerita Mason and Janice and Linda and Sue. and to all the women who participated in this very special production for National Philanthropy Day. It's a joy to be able to draw attention to the women who have made a remarkable difference at the University of Iowa. So thank you to everyone for participating. Your generosity is indeed inspiring. For those of you who are watching from home, thank you for tuning in, and we will continue to offer our virtual programming as well as in-person programming. I happen to actually be in Washington, D.C. this evening for some in-person programming tomorrow evening. If you would like some more information about upcoming events, please feel free to scan the QR code on your screen or go to our website at foriowa.org/events. foriowa.org/events. And if you're not already receiving the Iowa Magazine or the Iowa newsletter, please do sign up on our website for that as well, and we will be sure that you receive all of the university's latest news. Thank you again for joining us. We hope to see you all again soon. Good night.